This is Susan for AskWoody.com, and I'm going to go over some things tonight that basically a printer is driving me insane. And I'm having to do this remotely, which makes it even more fun because I'm having to wait for the person to be there at the printer and make sure that when they do some remote printing, it's working for them. But here's some of the things that I want to showcase to you if you find these as well. So this was a printer she bought from Amazon. She installed it, and it brought down the PCL6 driver. And one of the things we found, and when we first put it on the network, or I should say her local machine, it didn't say color. So where it says, and let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. I'm on a remote screen, so hold on, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Oops, I'm probably not helping any. Oops, hold on, let's try it this way, over there. So when we went into printer properties, basically it said color no. And for the longest time we were trying to figure out how we could get it to do yes. It was driving us insane. Let me get this a little bit out of the way. And we had to finally go into device settings. And you see where it says automatic configuration off? We had to click that, do update now, and then it would say color. That was found via Googling. And like I said, for the longest time, I couldn't figure out how to get it to work. So let me also show you some other tricks of the trade. So the next thing is, this is using an HP Universal PCL6 driver, which sometimes does work and sometimes it doesn't. So if you can, I try to find the exact device, the exact printer, and then go to the printer driver page and actually find the specific driver. And in this case, I'm looking at these down here, these basic drivers that specifically say multifunction, and I'm going to try those as well, rather than these universal print drivers. So I'm going to keep the universal print driver to see if that's works, but I'm also going to try out these basic drivers. And I'm also going to look for the dates on these drivers, because as a general rule, especially with all of the Print Nightmare fixes, the print spooler fixes that Microsoft gave out last year, generally speaking, I would say I've had to touch every single printer in the office at least once by giving it a new printer driver. It's one of those things where you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. Because ransomware has been able to use print spooler vulnerabilities to get into networks, Microsoft has in the last year over and over and over again tried to, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, fix print spooler vulnerabilities. As a result, they've hardened that print spooler, and drivers that used to work just fine for years suddenly don't. So especially after you install updates, if the very next time you reboot, try to print. Just print anything. Go to Word, type out something, print. And that should be your basic test after each update. If it doesn't work, before you uninstall the update, go out to the vendor website and see if there's a newer driver. And you can see here these are dated October 19, 2022, which tells you HP has gone back and rewritten the driver software. So before you rip out the update, if you can't print, try a driver first. Try to see if you can find one. If you can't find one on the site, come out to AskWoody.com, ask questions, and we can give you our best advice and help. So I'm going to download this driver and see what we can do. And by the way, I pulled down 2 sets of drivers to try this. First, I pulled down the basic drivers, and then I pulled down the full driver. Now, many times we always say start with what's called the basic drivers, because those full drivers sometimes can add all sorts of things and especially with some vendors who shall go unnamed, HP, they will bring down things that you don't want. So start with the basic drivers, and then if that doesn't work, go up to the full drivers. Also, and because I tend to stay away from inkjet printers, let me do a heads up on this. If you are not familiar with this issue already, if you have an inkjet printer, our lovely friend HP is doing this thing where they're delightfully mandating the use of their inkjet cartridges. And how they're doing that is through firmware updates. Now, normally I'm a person who says, oh yes, we want security. We want to update firmware. And I usually do that on especially more business-y printers. The ones we standardize now at the office and even recommend for home use, because they tend to be less worky and they just work, is Lexmark and Brother brand versus HP and the other ones out there, because they stay away from this kind of stuff. But if you are unlucky and you still have an inkjet printer, do be aware that those lovely HP manufacturers love to bind you to their printer drivers, or I should say printer ink cartridges. So they're mandating that. So again, I used to say, oh yes, go download that firmware, and now I go, you may want to investigate first to ensure that the firmware doesn't have any other gotchas that we were not aware of. So when in doubt, ask. Now, like many things in software installation, you want to make sure you read your options here. And generally speaking, I don't enable connected printing. That has introduced some vulnerabilities in the past, especially for homes and offices. So I tend to not do that. Usually when you set a printer up either via Wi-Fi or via a network connection, they usually, as long as your device is on the same network or Wi-Fi, it will talk to that printer. So I usually don't use connected printing to be able where you can email to a printer. I usually don't do that, so I say no thanks. I also don't turn on printer usage data. Again, these go, stop and read these things. Don't just say yes. We're going to say no thanks to analyze. And obviously you don't need to watch installations, but just a reminder, as you install drivers, read them too, because there's EULAs and there's privacy concerns in those driver installations as well. So now we have it set up with the specific LaserJet driver. I will have to wait until tomorrow when the person will be using the computer and remoting into the office to see if it will work. We were having issues that it wouldn't print remotely. So again, if at first you don't succeed, go try a different driver, go look for something specific to that model, find a basic driver, nothing fancy, just the driver, and question firmware. If you have any questions about printing, always come out to the forums. We're here to help. And believe me, printing can be, it either works or it drives you insane for hours on end. So until next time, this is Susan Bradley for AskWoody.com.